Best smoking ribs in town? Then we know exactly where you need to go. The Rib Shack Barbecue in Clearwater, located at 1850 Drew Street, is serving up freshly smoked ribs, chicken, pork, beef, and sausage, all served with their famous barbecue sauce. Pair it with their amazing sides like beans, mac and cheese, collard greens, potato salad, coleslaw, chips, and more. You are not going to be leaving hungry. Dine in, take out, or have it delivered with Uber Eats. 727-210-3077. That's the Rib Shack Barbecue, 1850 Drew Street in Clearwater. Looking for car shows? Then look no further than FLAcarshows.com. On your computer or on your mobile device, FLAcarshows.com is a comprehensive list of automotive events, plus videos and news articles. Whether you're looking for car shows, cruise-ins, meetups, automotive festivals, cars and coffees, or anything else relating to an internal combustion engine, then this is a site for you. Check it out online or on your phone at FLAcarshows.com.
A chance discovery takes us on a journey deep in time to a lost age, unlike anything you've ever known. A prehistoric world where the middle of North America lays submerged beneath a sea of strange creatures. Now, National Geographic Entertainment brings us an epic adventure, 82 million years in the making. Before they lived in our imaginations, they really lived. Sea Monsters, a prehistoric adventure.
Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! No doubt about it. I gotta get another hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Hey, this is Chuck Wright. You might know me from Quiet Right, Alice Cooper, House of Lords, and others. You're listening to Nostalgic Radio and Cars. Bang your head.
Okay, listeners, welcome. You're tuned into Nostalgic Radio and Cars, and I'm your show host, Robert. Run your computers and Google TanTalk1340.com, and you can see me live in the studios in downtown Clearwater. Don't forget to check out our website, GulfstreamMotorsports.com, where you can find out all about us. And if you've missed any of our 620-some-odd shows, visit NostalgicRadioandCars.com. Good evening, Bobby. How are you?
Oh, doing well. How about you?
Pretty good. So we had a little rain today. But anyway, all right, so tonight's guest is a musical guest. There was a clue at the very beginning, and he's kind of indirectly kind of connected. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We got some we have a fun show for you this evening. All right, car-wise, well, if you want to find out where all the car shows are, you definitely got to check out FLAcarshows.com. That is where all the stuff is, or can be found, that's going on in the state of Florida. Of course, in the summertime, there's still some weekend car shows, the local stuff, And
we'll come out there for 2 hours, and then when the sweat starts rolling down, get back in the car and enjoy no air conditioning.
Oh yeah, right. That's right. These old cars. Let me tell you about these old cars. Actually, there was an auction a couple days ago. It's called Dudley's Auction up in Big. A shout out to those guys up there in where is that? Inverness, someplace like that. Yeah. Anyway, they had a 74 MGB GT, similar to our little beloved Little Miss Moneypenny. But what was interesting about this car, and 74 was a transition year for MGBs. Okay, so the very, very early September, October, November cars had the 73 style chrome bumper guards with the little bumperettes on them, little rubber bumperettes. The January, February, March, April, kind of May, I'm not sure what years ours was or what month ours was, but those cars are, I think ours might be May, I'm not sure. Do you remember, Bobby?
I think so.
Okay, so those cars had what they called the big bumper guards, which were called Sabrinas, named after a very fit-looking young lady in England, and Sabrinas, and then the late '74 cars, June, July, August, were just murdered when they basically put the big ugly rubber bumpers on them. But the '74 cars, they still had kind of like the lower stance, and the '75 to '80 cars had the high stance. Now in Europe, they still had chrome bumpers, but we had to comply with bumper height restrictions and regulations, and so they pretty much ruined everything past '74. TR6s, Triumphs, I think they still had the Sabrinas on them from '74, '5, '6, and then that was last year. They didn't put rubber bumpers on them, so they were still tastefully done. Anyway, this particular car was an early '74. And a wire wheel car, nicely optioned. It was the popular, I'm going to say pumpkin orange, that they had that year, which was a real popular color on MGBs. And but what made this car interesting was, and I may have mentioned this before in one of the other shows, but what made this car kind of interesting is the fact that it had a cloth or vinyl sliding roof on it. Okay, now they didn't offer MGBs from the factory didn't come with a steel sunroof. Special order you could have. Back in those days you could do anything, but because everything was basically a la carte. And but this particular one had a folding top. Now that was actually quite common in England. Okay, a lot of cars had that. The ad referred to it as a convertible. It is definitely not a convertible. It is basically a sliding sunroof. Because if you remember the early '60s Volkswagens, late '50s, early '60s, Volkswagens had basically a material, and it was a kind of a vinyl sliding roof. It was not uncommon to see a lot of cars back in the day that they retrofitted, particularly in Europe, with a vinyl sliding roof. Kind of cool looking though. So that made that car kind of unique. I wasn't sure where that car would go. I follow Bring a Trailer a lot. So do a lot of guys that listen to this radio show, because Bring a Trailer, they started out, like I said, 20 some odd years ago. It was just a couple car stories. Then they threw a car auction, a car on there to sell, and then they started an auction. And then basically, like I mentioned before, after Jay Leno bought that little Falcon, 63.5 Falcon, that basically put them on the map. And now everybody goes there. Now, the thing about Bring a Trailer is, unlike a lot of the other websites, it caters more to the classic car guy, the real true car enthusiast. So they do put some oddball stuff on there every once in a while. I mean, sure, you'll find an Excursion, you'll find a Bronco, you'll find a Escalade or something like that, something real low mileage, but you'll find Jaguars, Porsches, Ferraris, Ferrari wheels, Porsche wheels, X-race cars, Triumphs, Aston Martins, just, Maseratis, Lamborghinis are on there. In fact, there's a Ford GT on there right now. That's some crazy amount of money. There was a 3500 Ferrari or Maserati on there a while back. There's a Diablo on there right now. There's an F40 on there right now. Boss 429. There's a 70 Boss 429 on there. And it's funny because, you always hear about sniper bidding. It goes on everywhere. It doesn't matter. I mean, we watch Alan and I, who tunes into the show a lot, a good friend of mine's on there from time to time. They had a 68 Shelby on it. It was a barn find. And I think it hovered around 50, 60 for a long time. It finally hammered it, I think, around somewhere in the 70s. And barn find, GT500, not a KR. Okay, so it's just got the 428 in a PI motor, but not the Cobra Jet, and automatic, solid body, but just dingy looking, kind of like what I like to find, barn finds. By comparison, they had a 68 KR on there that I'm not sure how extensively they went through the car, but it brought 210. So I mean, it's all over the board, and you see some cars on there with high mileage. A high mileage Porsche, for example, might bring 50, 60. But really, really, really low mileage, 80, mid-80s Porsche might bring over 100. So it's all over the board. There's an MGC on there right now, which is a 6-cylinder MGB GT. It was a 6-cylinder MGC GT, and which is a very good-looking car. The thing about the MGB, the GTs, it's kind of a handsome-looking car. It really is. And I say, bang for the buck, if you're buying a sports car, European sports car, bang for the buck, the MGB is really the ideal car. It's roomy, it's comfortable, it's a unibody car. It's very similar. It's the English version of a Mustang. Okay, so they're cheap, they're economical, plenty of parts available. In fact, I forget what the name of the company is right now, but they actually you can special order a brand new MGB. Now think about that, a brand new MGB, and some of those cars are 50, 60 grand. In fact, there was one of those on there too not too long ago. So some pretty interesting cars on there, and it's kind of like my go-to page. Now there's a couple other ones on there I go to. I check out eBay. I go to Facebook and stuff like that. I Google project cars a lot, because you just never know what shows up. And then of course, like a lot of guys, it's just like when I walk into a building. Probably need to find that one clip, Bobby. What else do you have in the garage? So, and that's, I always kind of clown around. And, when I walk into, when I'm looking on the show, on these ads, I'm always looking around what's in the background, because you never know. I mean, so many times, and it happens to me too. I have something there, but I intentionally take a picture with something else in the background to stir up some interest, because somebody might call, hey, what about that back there? No, it's not for sale, but do you have one for sale? You see, so a lot of times that, it can create Now, I just gave away a trade secret, didn't I, Bobby? I shouldn't have done that. Bad daddy. Anyway, did you find it?
Not yet.
Okay. Anyway, so, and it's kind of like when I walk into a guy's garage. I mean, I was in the garage, I don't know, some guy's shop years ago. I met this guy at a swap meet. Actually, it was over in Lakeland, and he had a bunch of Jaguar parts, E-type stuff. And I said, where's the rest of the car? He said, well, I cut it up. I said, dang, what'd you do? I said, those doors that you have, they came off a Roadster. He says, yeah, it was pretty rough. Well, one guy's interpretation of rough is another guy's like not so rough interpretation. Okay. I'll give you a good example. A friend of mine, Hank, who listens to my show a lot, had one of one. They only made one. 1969 Boss 302. No, 69 Shelby G-code factory Boss 302. So Hank had the car years and years ago. He called me up and he says, hey, when we were talking, he says, yeah, I need some parts for this Boss 420 Boss 302. And I said, oh, okay, well, I don't have anything, but I might know something. Well, what year is it? And he says, 69. I said, 69. I said, what's it in? He says, well, it's in a Shelby. Well, it turns out they found the car in Michigan. It was the only one. Okay. Well, I always wanted another 69 Shelby, particularly a fastback. And I'm a Boss 302 guy. So I don't know what I said, well, what kind of shape? Now he only lived an hour from here. So I asked him, I said, what kind of shape it is? Oh, it's rough. Well, his interpretation of rough and my interpretation of rough are two different cars, and I'm sorry to get that car because it's now worth, I mean, I could have bought the car for, $8-9 grand back then. And the body was decent, but, it was missing a few pieces, but heck, I'd have put another motor in it. No big deal. We eventually found the stuff I needed, but the car's worth $1 million now. It's just like Mario Parada had a good friend of mine out of Michigan. He had, we were at Elkhart Lake, and he had this 68 Shelby convertible sitting there. And he says, it's not a 68 Shelby, it's a 67. And I said, well, if it's a 67, it would have to there's only one they made. It was a prototype. And he says, yeah, but nobody knew anything about the car and there was no paperwork yet. I will grant you that SAC, Shelby American Automobile Club, has probably the finest record keeping of all the Shelbys. And I remember Howard Pardee, who's in charge of the 66, 67 Shelbys, and Dave Matthews Jim Matthews, I think it is the 67 registrar, and Vince's Liska is 68, 69, 70. Anyway, so they have, Carroll Shelby allowed them to go through his Gardenia office attic, so to speak, and they found just boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of original paperwork. None of this stuff was thrown out. It was all there, all original paperwork from back in the day, going back to the early 60s. When they were building Cobras. And so they've archived all this stuff, and it's in their Shelby registry. So the Shelby registry is so big now that they have a book for 65, 66, 67s, 68, 69, and 70. So, but it's totally documented. So it's really hard to fake a Shelby, because too many guys know. And of course, I'm one of the state reps for the Shelby Club. I have access to a lot of the data, and, naturally I'll check something else. But anyway, so that car, they were selling for like 11, 12 grand at the swap meet. And it was part 67, part 68, but nobody really knew. And I looked at it and I haggled over it and I thought about it, and I could have got it for under 10 grand and I didn't buy it because now today that car is the car. Turned out it was one of one, and it's sitting in South Florida. And it's over $1 million. But anyway.
What else do you have in the warehouse?
That's the one I'm looking for. So when I walk into a guy's shop and
warehouse. Not just a garage.
Yeah, the warehouse. Yeah. When I walk into somebody's shop guess what I do? I'm all eyeballs. I'm going in there to look at a Mustang, but I'm scouring everything. I'm looking for signs. I'm looking for car parts. I'm looking for anything that's unusual that might have some value, antiques, whatnot. But anyway, so where I was going with this guy with the Jaguar deal. So he said, well, yeah, I still have all the stuff I trimmed off the other car. So I went over there. Sure enough, there he had the bonnet. It was usable. It had the doors, seats, engine parts, transmission, transaxle. Rear, independent rear suspension, all this stuff. That was all fine and dandy. I didn't have a Jag at the time, or I did. I don't remember what I did or not. Maybe I did. I don't know. I'll never tell. Anyway, but I was staring in the attic, and guess what I saw? An old vintage Hobie surfboard, like a 10.5 footer. So out of everything that was in this guy's garage, with all the hot rods, race cars, Jag parts, all kinds of cool stuff in there, but most of the stuff he had car-wise was Chevrolet, and I'm not a Chevy guy. But did have some Camaros in there, 67, 68, 69 Camaros in there, and some other cool stuff. But the only thing that I wanted was that surfboard. It's a California kid thing, but it's a Hobie. That was like the real board. Kind of like we had Bing Cope on our show a long time ago, Bing surfboards, so. But Hobie, Bing was like a big name out in California back in the day, Southern Cal. Hobie was kind of like Southern Cal, but all over Northern Cal surfs. Santa Cruz, you see them a lot. So that was it. And of course, Hobie cats, the little catamaran things that we used to sail on and stuff like that. But anyway, enough of my time to bring on our guest. So Bobby's going to go ahead and fire up the stereo here. We're going to play a little.
For which we have no records today.
We have no records?
We have no records.
No records?
My record collection is very empty.
Wait a minute. Didn't I? You know what I did? I actually wrote it on my thing here. So why don't we go ahead and play? It's called Sunshine Ship, and it's by Arthur Hurley and Gottlieb. Oh. Now the reason I'm playing this is because these guys
browse my collection here.
Yeah.
Okay, what was the last name?
It was called Arthur Hurley and Gottlieb.
All right, so let's go to G.
Yeah. Okay, now so these guys. Okay, there's a connection here with our guest tonight. These guys basically went to University of South Florida. That's USF, and started a little garage band in a little town called Tampa. Cigar City, okay? And they had a couple of albums, a couple of hits back in the early 70s, 72, 73, 74, somewhere around there. So, but anyway, so we're playing a local garage band that made it big in a way. But it's a clue. But anyway, hey, you're tuned to the Nostalgic Radio Cars. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with our special guest for the evening.
Sun is always shining. People helping each other out and never minding. But to get there, take a little trip. So come on, everybody, get on board the Sunshine Ship and ride away, everybody going. Yeah, ride away, everybody leaving. And ride, and ride. Get there. You'll all be feeling fine, 'cause everybody living there will be treating you so kindly. See the little children running, having fun, and they'll be playing. You're gonna shake your head and smile, say I knew what he was saying, but you better come on, everybody. We got to leave today. Heavy rain's coming, we must be on our way. Ride away, everybody going. Yeah, ride away, everybody leaving. When the flowers bloom, play a little tune. So come on, everybody, we'll be leaving soon. Ride away, everybody going. Yeah, ride away, everybody.
Hey there, this is John Oates, and you're listening to Nostalgic Radio and Cars.
All right, we're back, and you're tuning into Nostalgic Radio and Cars, and it's time to introduce our special guest for the evening. This gentleman is a legendary drummer, played with notable bands like the one we just played, Arthur Hurley and Gottlieb. He played with Orleans, most notably Peter Gabriel, and Hall & Oates. I'm delighted to welcome to the show, drum roll, Bobby. All right, Jerry Murata. Jerry, how you doing?
Wow, you got Jerry Marotta on your show?
Yeah. He is a sensational skins beater.
Are you sure? You sure it's the Jerry Marotta?
I'm told. He is the real Jerry Marotta Please stand up.
Are you? Or you have to make sure that it's Rick. He's Rick Marotta's little brother, correct?
Rick Marotta. No, wait a minute. He played with like legendary Motown bands like Aretha Franklin and bands like that. That Rick Marotta, and this is his little brother Jerry.
No, Frank Sinatra, Steely Dan, Linda Ronstadt. The list goes on and on. That's my brother. But what's funny is when back around the time when I noticed. I don't know if you were playing it on your show, but the music that you were playing, Sunshine Ship, which band Arthur Hurley and Gottlieb.
Yeah,
that was my brother. It made that record.
Really?
Record, and that's how I got the job with those guys. And it's just he was very instrumental in getting me started in the business as a drummer. But back in those days, I didn't have a name. I was just Rick Marotta's little brother. When I moved into New York, I moved to New York City, and I was running around trying to do gigs and stuff. And they didn't know who I was, but they did know that I was Rick Marotta's little brother. So that was my that was who I was, Rick Marotta's little brother. Anyway, it's great to be on the show. Thank you for having me. And let's talk about cars and music and maybe girls.
Oh, okay. We can do that. Okay. No, now wait a minute. Let's see. Let's go back when you were Rick Marotta's. Still are Rick Marotta's little brother. Was that a shadow that you had to kind of like crawl out from underneath and put on a different pair of shoes, or did that? Because a lot of times people go, yeah, I was always overshadowed. But then, a lot of times they kind of go out and do their own thing, which you did, obviously, when you played with some legendary bands.
Well, my brother was obviously very instrumental in getting me off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he connected me with Arthur Hurley and Gottlieb. They were on Columbia Records. They had like a top 40 single. And I mean, some people know this, may already know this. I was in summer school after 11th grade. I was going to summer school to eliminate going to 12th grade to my final year of high school. And about a week before summer school ended, I got an opportunity to I went and played with, kind of auditioned for these guys, Arthur Hurley and Gottlieb. They had wanted my brother to tour with them, but he was too busy in New York. So he said, "Oh, my little brother's perfect. He's probably the perfect guy for you guys." So I went and played with them. They said, "You're great. We want you to be in our band. We want you to play with us." So I had to go back to my teachers, the two teachers in summer school, and I was very fortunate. And my the two teachers let me take my final exams on the road with me.
Wow!
To finish high school in the summer of 11th grade. So I managed to eliminate 12th grade, and I went out on the road with Arthur Hurley and Gottlieb.
Wow. Well, that's funny you mentioned that, because see, in high school, I did the same thing. I took summer courses so I could graduate. I wanted to try to make it so I could skip 11th, but what I did is I ended up graduating midterm in my senior year. So I only went September, October, November, December, and then that was it. So I can definitely relate to that. So when did you start picking up the drumsticks?
Picked up the sticks when I was 10. And the story was that my older brother, Rick, he was in college, first year of college. And this is like 1964, 1965.
Mm-hmm.
His buddy, where we grew up, was drafted, went to Vietnam, and he was a drummer. He had a drum kit. My brother talked him into letting him have his drums at our house while he was gone. That's how it all began.
Uh-huh. So did your brother play drum? Your brother had already been playing drums, but since the drum set was there, then you picked it up, so to speak?
he wasn't playing drums. He brought the drums into the house. He started banging around on them, and I started banging around. I mean, I started listening to him play around on the drums, and then I'd go up in the attic, and when he'd leave, I'd go up and kind of try to imitate him, and that's how it all happened.
Okay, now I play a little guitar, a little piano, and I beat on the drums before. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just like, it kind of sounds like I got a beat. But let's assume I know nothing about the drums, and let's assume my listeners don't know anything about drums. How do you learn? I mean, are there notes? I mean, how do you play the drums? I mean, how do you learn to play what's the basics?
Well, there's two ways. There's the proper way, which is to take lessons, which is not how I did it, or my brother. And the other way was that we were very into Motown, black music. There was a lot of that going on in our house. Records like James Brown and, just generally Motown records.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a little record player up in the attic where the drums were set up. And I would just put a record on, and I would just start playing the drums along to the record. That's how I learned to play.
So you play by ear?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I learned to play the drums.
Now, are there styles and techniques? Tell us about styles and techniques. How does that work?
Well, of course, there are styles. There are techniques. I didn't really know styles or techniques. My style was Motown.
Okay.
That was basically it. So I was listening to a lot of black music, at 10, 11, 12. That's what I was listening to. That was the style that I liked. That's the style that I preferred. So, that's what I did. Technique, I don't really have any technique because I just taught myself how to play. So, I don't know. I guess I kind of had a gift for it, I suppose. I don't know.
Okay. So like, for example, when you get hired for a band and Arthur Hurley and Gottlieb, that was kind of like let's just say kind of like a pop band, kind of like, so do you kind of listen, do you sit down and listen to them play the guitar first or the piano, a couple verses there, and then you just kind of like, okay, I kind of know where we're going, because you don't want to overshadow those guys. You're kind of like, you carry the beat. I was kind of like a bass player. Bass player is the same thing, Bass and drums kind of like set the tone, in my opinion, and the guitar and the piano is kind of like, I don't want to say fluff, but I mean it's the instrumental part that kind of, everybody kind of gets to, but it's the beat that everybody kind of dances to, and that's as a result of the drums and the bass guitar. And
yeah.
So do you, they do their thing first, or do you start with a drum beat? I mean, how do you do it?
Well, look, here's the way this all started.
Okay.
They had a record.
Yeah.
I listened to the record, kind of learned the style. They were very much like, ironically, back then, the style was like Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Okay.
It was that kind of music. Acoustic guitar, violin, and the piano. The third guy played piano and bass, and they all sang. Vocal group, very, very much like pop, acoustic, awesome, really good, typical music of the time, like the band Bread, or there was a whole bunch of artists back then. James Taylor, So I mean, as I started to develop my taste in music, as I got a little bit bigger, 15, 16, I started listening to stuff like James Taylor, Jackson Brown, the California kind of thing. And so that's how I learned. I kind of listened to their record. I sort of learned the songs, and it wasn't hard for me to play that stuff. It was kind of instinctive for me. And then little by little, you start, one of the guys will come in with a song idea, and we'll just start jamming, and that's how it all happened. I mean, that's how I developed the ability to dive in to a song idea and play along to it and turn it into something.
So, okay. So like you always hear about, oh, the guy's doing a drum solo. And so did you get a chance to do drum solos? Is that something that you kind of create on your own when you do a solo? How does that work?
Is this a trick question?
No. I'm serious. I'm playing dum-dum right now because I really don't know, and I'm trying to come up with a decent question to ask you because and I'm just saying, okay, so like when you do, like when you, it's kind of like when you do a riff, you're sitting there playing around with it and you're going, okay, I kind of like this. You're basically playing pentatonic scale for the most part, but I don't know if you have that in the drum world. I don't know how that. So I'm hoping you can educate me a little bit here.
Well, let me answer the question.
Sure.
The reason you'll know why I asked you if it was a trick question.
Oh, okay.
Now, when I answer it, because when I started playing with Hall & Oates, we went out and we used to do a song called Sweet Soul Music. I think it was Arthur Connolly. Do you like good music? Yeah, sweet soul music. So we used to do that. And then in the song, there was a break and everybody took a solo. So when it came time for me, I stopped, and because I did not want to play a drum solo, so I would stop, and the first time I did that with them, I sang one of their songs, a part of one of their songs, but over time, I never once played a drum solo.
Really?
Sometimes I would mime a drum solo, which the audience at first thought I was having like an epileptic fit. And then sometimes I would tell jokes. I would come out front. I would stop the show. And I would read from a book. But it was always comedy. It was always funny. And many people would stop me on the street and tell me that they saw me with Hall & Oates and it was the best drum solo they ever heard. Because they didn't really want. Some people don't like drum solos, and I couldn't play a drum solo, so I had to figure out what to do instead of playing a drum solo. So that's why it's a trick question, because I kind of got back then. I got kind of known for being the guy who didn't play a drum solo, but turned it into like a moment in the show that was still kind of special, but wasn't me doing a drum solo.
Well, you're basically a soliloquist then. I think that's the term they use, right?
I'm a soloist.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool. So let me ask you a question. Okay, so you were with Arthur Hurley Gottlieb, and then you were with Orleans for a while too. So how do you make the transition from one band to another? Is it something you do? You get invited? How did it work for you?
Well, once again, my brother knew John Hall, the kind of leader of Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, Orleans was probably my favorite band on the planet.
Oh, really?
Incredible band. In fact, my girlfriend in high school, she was a year ahead of me. So she went to college in Ithaca. She went to Ithaca College in upstate New York. And the first time she came back, she had this album and she gave it to me. She said, this plays up around Ithaca all the time. They great. She gave the record. It was Orleans. And I became an instant Orleans fan. Phenomenal band. And then one thing led to another. Friend broke up with me. She dumped me. And then my brother somehow connected me with John Hall because they were looking to add another drummer to the band. I went and auditioned for Orleans. I got the job. And I beat out a lot of drummers. A lot of drummers wanted that job. So I got the job. And as a kid, I think I was 18 or 19, cut to my high school girlfriend dumping me. And then the next year, I'm pulling into Ithaca to play a concert at Ithaca College, and I'm playing Orleans. So that was a bit of a funny scenario.
I think they call it irony.
It was, you could call it whatever you want. Sweet Revenge.
Sweet Revenge. Well, I remember the song "You're Still the One," and I am married to my wife 39 years, and we used to dance to that song. So I remind her that she's still the one. So
yeah,
there you go.
So that was the first hit record I ever played on.
So what was it like for you at a young age to be with a band that had a top hit? Arthur Hurley and Gottlieb had some top hits too, but now you're with the Orleans, and that You're Still the One was played everywhere. I mean, they literally just, that was on every radio station around here forever.
Well, yeah. Still the One was, I think it made it to number 2 on the top 10, in top 40, in America.
Mm-hmm.
I think it ended up to number 2, and it probably would have been number 1, except for the number 1 record at the time was a record called Disco Duck.
Oh, Disco Duck.
Exactly, and it was a novelty song, so there was no beating Disco Duck at that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We only made it to number 2. I believe it was number 2, but nobody was gonna displace Disco Duck from number 1 at that particular moment. So, but anyway, it was awesome.
Well, there you go.
That's so funny. That's great. But Orleans had a song before Still the One called "Dance with Me."
Oh yeah, "Dance with Me," da 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 da. Dance with. I remember that one.
That was a big hit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was because of Orleans is really how I ended up in Woodstock, New York, which is where I live, because they were based in Woodstock. And at the time, I had just moved into New York City, and I grew up in the suburbs of New York. And the last place I wanted to be was in the country. I wanted to be in Manhattan. So, but I joined Orleans, and I would come up to Woodstock to rehearse, and we're kind of based up here. But I was living in Manhattan, and then that was in 1975. I finally did move up to Woodstock in 1986. Long after I had moved on, and I had been playing with Peter Gabriel for almost 10 years. Played with Hall & Oates, did 3 records with them, and a lot of other stuff in that period between 75 and 86. So, yeah, that's that story.
Well, so you made the transition from, it's funny you're talking about Woodstock. Everybody thinks Woodstock was where, Woodstock happened, but apparently Yasser Park is, I don't know, miles and miles and miles down the road, right? But Woodstock was kind of like the next city around here. Is that how that all worked?
Woodstock's a small town. Max Yasgur's farm was probably, I'm going to say, maybe 80 miles from Woodstock, 80 miles from Woodstock. So, it wasn't where the festival happened. The festival was supposed to happen in Woodstock, but at the last minute, the guys who were the promoters neglected to get permits.
Mm-hmm.
And so as the thing started to grow, I think the town of Woodstock did not want to have, thousands and thousands of dirty, filthy, smelly
hippies.
So they had to scuffle to find a property. And I think really what it had to be was it had to be owned. They had to find a big property, and it had to be privately owned so that the person who owned it could give them permission to do it. And so that's what they did. And they found Max Yasgur's farm, and he allowed them to do the concert there. And the rest is history.
Did you, during that period of time, were you fortunate enough to go to Woodstock, or was it just pardon me?
First of all, I think I was about 13.
Yeah.
Well, which my parents still wouldn't let me go to Woodstock.
Okay.
They wouldn't let me go to Woodstock. But, and I wasn't really interested in Woodstock, because, I mean, the artists, like, for instance, I liked were like Flying the Family Stone with like I liked, but I wasn't into the Who, and I wasn't into the rock element of it. You know, I was still kind of like a Motown black knob. It had to be black music, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't really interested in Woodstock. I didn't have any interest in all stuff.
Well, you know, Motown's basically funk and soul, you know, and that's some good stuff. I mean, you know, when you talk about the early Jimi Hendrix, well, my one just went blank. You know, Supremes, Martha and the Vandellas, who's Temptations, yeah, you know, and you know, those, yeah.
You know, Memphis, then there's Philly, Detroit, you know, Motown, you know, Stevie Wonder, you know, the list goes on and on. It goes on and on. It's like,
well, now that brings something up because you mentioned Philly. Isn't that where American Bandstand started?
You know, it may have. Very possible. I don't know.
I was going to ask you if you ever played on American Bandstand or any of the TV shows. Now, wait a minute. If you were Peter Gabriel and John Oates in the late 70s, early 80s, obviously that was the big MTV era, right?
It was the very early days of MTV.
So were you ever involved in any of the videos that Hall & Oates and Peter Gabriel did?
Not Peter Gabriel, but Hall & Oates. We did a video that was, I can't remember, it might have been called Intraveno. This is very early on. This is very early on in the days of MTV when it really first just got started. But we did do a video, and it's probably on YouTube somewhere. I think it might be called Intraveno. It was from a record called Ecstatic. That was the first record that I did with Daryl and John, and it was a great experience playing with those guys. That's really I'd have to say that's my wheelhouse, is that rock and soul, you know, because they're very influenced by Motown and black music as well. So that was really fun playing with them. I maybe the most fun gig that I ever had was playing with Hall & Oates, just musically, just because of the music. The music really resonated with me. I mean, that we had the same kind of background and influences.
Interesting. What about now? Daryl has he does this thing. It's called Daryl's House or something like that, where he has a lot of musicians come in. They all just sit around. And you guys jam. Did you ever get a chance to participate in any of that? No, not yet. Right.
I've moved on. You know, long gone from Daryl and John. You know, I just moved on. You know, at the time I was working with Daryl and John, and I was working with Peter Gabriel at the same time.
Oh, really?
John really wanted me to commit myself to Hall & Oates,
mm-hmm.
Which I chose to stay loyal to Peter Gabriel because I had been playing with Peter for a couple of years, and that's just that was my choice. In hindsight, you know, musically, Hall & Oates was much more my style. But yeah, I mean, I did both for about 2 or 3 years. I managed to be able to go back and forth between Peter and Hall & Oates.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a great time for me. You know, I was really in the loop. I was really in my prime. You know, I finished a tour with Daryl and John in Tokyo, and everybody went home. And I got on a plane and flew to England, and started rehearsing that day, the first day with Peter and his band for a tour with Peter. So I went like from Hall & Oates to Gabriel, and I was going back and forth for like about 2 or 3 years. Pretty amazing, pretty magical.
Wow. Now go ahead.
very different kind of music, totally different music from one to the other.
Yeah, how would you describe Peter Gabriel's music? I mean, it's not techno, but it's got kind of it's got some interesting music. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know how you call it. It's kind of, I mean, like
there's no really categorizing. There's no categorizing.
I mean, like Tall Notes is kind of like, kind of commercial, kind of dance music. You can kind of get to it, and it's real beaty, and everything like that. And then Peter Gabriel's is a little, it's almost kind of like in a way, and I don't want to, David Bowie was a little different. Pink Floyd's a little bit different. It's kind of, and there's kind of a message in the song, but the music itself is, I'll just say it's a little different. I don't know how you describe it, but it's definitely.
Peter's unusual. It comes from the progressive background.
Yeah.
Genesis. It's very theatrical. He's brilliant. He's an amazing guy, and he's an amazing creator. He's an amazing, I don't know. I mean, it really changed my life in a lot of ways working with Peter, and I learned a lot about, it changed my taste, it changed my approach to making music, and it changed the way I listen to music. He had a major influence on me. I was very fortunate to have gotten that job.
All right, so let's fast forward to today. So today you have a production studio up in Woodstock, and you tour, and you do two. You're with you do like a Peter Gabriel type tribute, and you also do Steely Dan type tribute music too, right? With two different bands. Is that how that works?
It's a project called the Pretty Project.
Okay.
Music from the period of time that I worked with Peter.
Okay.
It's a great group of guys, including Trey Gunn, who was in King Crimson for many years, and he and I worked together with Robert Fripp for a while. And Trey's an awesome musician, and the rest of the guys in the band are also quite, they're all great players. So there's that, and then there's also Reelin' in the Years, which is it's really a Steely Dan tribute band,
Mm-hmm.
Which is, the music is just phenomenal. I mean, it's such great music, and I'm such a big fan of Steely Dan. I listen to them a lot,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's fun, and it's a big band. It's like usually 11 pieces. Sometimes my brother will join us, and my brother played on 3 Steely Dan records.
Oh, really?
Three of their albums. So sometimes he'll join us, and then it becomes an even bigger band. But, we've got 4 horn players, 2 guitar players, including Jesse Grest, who's a guitar player that's been playing with Todd Rundgren for the last 30 years. And Jay Collins, a sax player who plays with Donald Fagen, who, along with Walter Becker, created Steely Dan,
mm-hmm.
and still tours, although sadly, Walter Becker passed away a few years ago. Great band. I play with a band called Annie and the Hedonists, which is like a swing band.
Oh, really?
Doing an incredible. I love those guys. There's like this 5-piece band, and the swing from like the early 1900s. I love playing with those guys. I still do a lot of recording, either with people who come to the studio, or I have a studio in my home, as well as Dreamland Studios, which is a big residential studio not far from Woodstock, which I run. And I still end up working on recordings with people, which they'll either send me files to play on, or they'll come and we'll go into the studio together. I'm always doing tons of different things. I do a lot of I'm producing right now named Michael Keane, great singer-songwriter. I produced a woman named Sarah Parada. We made a record called Blue to Gold, which is a phenomenal record. She's a great singer-songwriter, you know. And what else am I doing? I have a group called Fragile Fate that with a guy named Rupert Greenell, who's the keyboard player in a band called The Fix. If you know The Fix, they've been around forever.
Oh, yeah.
They've been together for 40 years now. And the guy named Eric Taylor, who's kind of the leader of that band. I do different things. Doing a lot of different things. I play for the last 4 years, I talked to my brother who lives on Martha's Vineyard, which is an island off of Massachusetts. He spends the summers there. I talked him into doing the Murata Brothers band. So my brother and I play double drums in a club, in the Portuguese American Club I guess it's in Oak Bluff on Martha's Vineyard. So we do that every Wednesday night. That's a lot of fun. Great band, great players. You know, I'm always doing. I've always got a bunch of things, a bunch of projects going.
Sounds like it. Jerry, we are out of time, but real quick, okay, if people want to find out more about you, how do they go about doing it? In 20 seconds.
And there's, you know, www.jerrymurata.com. There's www.dreamlandrecording.com for the studio and me. There's the Murata Brothers on Facebook. There's Jerry Murata on Facebook, Instagram, you know, all of it. I'm easy to find. Just Google me.
Just Google you. All right. Well, Jerry, you know what? We didn't get a chance to talk about your cars, but real quick, we got another 15 seconds. Name off some of the cars you had real quick in 15 seconds.
Oh, 69 GTO, 67 MGB GT, a 67, 68, 64, 67, 68 Corvette. You know, those are and you know what? Now I'm an old guy. I've got a Prius. A Volvo XC90.
Oh, wow.
Tone the cars down.
Well, Jerry, I want to thank you for hanging out with us here at Nostalgia Radio Car. It truly was a real treat and a real pleasure to have you on the show. We'll definitely have to get you back. We'll probably have you come back maybe when you have Jeff on. If we can get Jeff on the radio show and you guys can double team us. That'd be a lot of fun.
Get us on together. Jeff, we're still very close friends.
Sounds like a winner. And the fact that you got a Clearwater connection, too.
Absolutely.
Jerry,
I've been Jeff is the one who said, I've been looking in Bradenton. I've been on Zillow looking, you know, looking at property to potentially, you know, find a place down in that area.
Wow. All right, Jerry, we're up against the clock. I want to thank you very much for hanging out with us here at Nostalgia Radio Cars. I want to thank my special guest, Jerry Murata, legendary drummer for Orleans, Peter Gabriel, Hall & Oates, and Arthur Hurley, and Gottlieb. Jerry, take care. We'll talk to you in the future. Thank you very much. In the meantime, I want to thank all my listeners for tuning into Nostalgia Radio Cars. Don't forget, every Tuesday between 7 and 8 p.m. on the Tan Talk Radio Network for the most fascinating names in motorsports and music. And in the meantime, I'll see you at some of the car shows. Stay safe, drive carefully, and love your family.
WTAN, Clearwater.
FM 106.1.
WDCF, Dade City.
FM 102.3.
WZHR, Zephyrhills.
FM 104.3.
Listen.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Zoom.
I'm Jennifer Kuiper. In Chicago, severe storms and heavy rains threaten Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. This after record rainfall caused flash flooding and water rescues in the St. Louis area overnight. KMOVT